views expressed on the following program are not necessarily those of WPSL. But you knew that. And you also know that we're the ones that encourage you to like and share them on Facebook and YouTube, but especially with your friends. That's right. The African American scene is time right now. Rudy Howard, independent insurance agent, hosts the African American scene, moving to Mondays, November the 8th. Remember that. But right now, he's here and ready to take you on. Here's your host, Rudy Howard.
Good evening, good evening, good evening. Always glad to be with you here on a Wednesday night. Tonight's going to be your night. I'm going to open it up and I'm going to let you talk about anything you want to talk about. So that number is 340-1590. That's 340-1590. You can talk about anything you want. I'm going to talk a little bit about a couple of things, but I'm putting no limitation on you. You can, whatever is on your mind that you feel like talking about. If you want to talk about Biden's Build Back Better plan. Now, one of the things I've seen is like, they had a question on Facebook, if there was anything in the world that you could change right now, what would you change? And to my surprise, quite a few people said President Biden. If I could do anything that would make the world better, it would be change President Biden. I was like, well, that's interesting. But yes, anything you want to talk about.
We know what they've been listening to.
For sure, for sure. In fact, if there's anything you think that will make the world a better place, I'm willing to listen to that too.
We're all open for that.
Yeah, we're open for that. Let me remind you that open enrollment is about to begin for marketplace insurance on November 1st. On November 1st, you will be able to get a open enrollment plan on the marketplace or Obamacare. So that's your opportunity. And if you need help with that, the phone number is 475-8856. That's 475-8856. I can help you with your open enrollment for marketplace insurance. And Steve, how are you, sir?
Good. How are you, Rudy?
Okay.
I want to give some praise out for a change.
Okay.
To the city employees of Port St. Lucie. I had a couple of neighborhood problems, one with handicap parking and one with damage from builders. Believe it or not, I went to them. Within 72 hours, they had corrected the handicap. And within 72 hours, they were out here, they agreed with me, and have taken action to make the developer fix it. So kudos to the employees of Port St. Lucie because they're outstanding.
Yes.
The hierarchy, I'm talking about the elected people and stuff, not the department heads. Hierarchy, different story. Forget it. Different story. But the other thing I wanted to talk about was America. I watched over this last weekend the 4-hour documentary on race, and then the Stone Ghost of the South, which was an excellent program on monuments and what they mean and what they say. And it came to me finally. Let's stop referring to each other as pigeonholed, Italian, Irish, whatever. How about saying I'm an American of such descent? But how about putting America first for a change?
Yeah.
You know, I mean, we all are Americans. I don't care what color, what size, where you came from. If you're here, you're American. So let's start celebrating that and stop celebrating dissension from America because there is no alternative. You know, the only alternative is socialism or fascism. I don't think anybody wants those.
That's true. Very true.
So, people have got to stop and think they're becoming polarized and tribalized. But now the government's breaking up the queer nans and all those people that are being indicted. You saw that judge yesterday on TV that told him, flat out that he wasn't taking any nonsense.
Yep.
That was that's what's got to happen in this country. They've got to get to the root of the problem and solve it. They're dancing around the system right now, and that's crazy. That's just going to make the American public mad, And they're blaming Biden, and Biden basically doesn't have a thing to do with it.
Nope.
A president doesn't have that much power. It's Congress. People always refer to the Constitution and the rights, but they never read it. So, if they read it, they'd understand how our system works. And right now it's not working because the people behind January 6th haven't been indicted yet.
Well,
It's
and
just the people who
and the thing that I would say I have learned over the past 2 years, to my surprise, is how fragile our democracy is.
Absolutely.
Our democracy was built on a lot of norms and things taken for granted that would be done in transitions from one party to the next party, and those were not laws.
No,
And
they're
as-
understanding.
Yeah, and as I began to look into it, I read the book by Kim, Understanding the Constitution, and one of the things that she talks about in that book is how many of the things that were broken were not laws, and how we assumed they were laws because in some cases we had abided by those principles for 100 years.
Right.
But
They
when
never checked them out.
Right, but when Trump decided to break them, he broke them, but there was no law that he broke. And when you
Well,
begin to think about how much we counted on ceremony and common understanding, which is as it should be for our country, but that's not going to work. We've got to make a change on that.
Absolutely. See, Trump, in my eyes, took the presidency out of the royalty class and put it into basically the barroom.
Yes.
And,
Yeah.
I don't like that at all. That's not right. That's not American. That's not what 1.75 million people died for freedom since the revolution.
That's right.
That's not going to fly. And you're seeing less than 0.1% that are out there acting up. The rest of the people, if you notice, they just basically ignoring it.
Yes,
they
but
can demonstrate-
that's a problem too, though. And
I've always said that.
Yeah, I
I'm the
know.
guy that's
You and I
calling
both-
you useless, stupid American.
you and I both
Yes,
have agreed with that. There's this segment of people, they don't want to get involved, just like I've heard you get frustrated about people not coming to the city council meetings. They don't want to get involved. They want to whine and complain. But that's not the answer.
Nope.
The answer is to get off your butt and do something about it.
You see, I had two problems. I got off my butt, and they're both solved within 72 hours.
Yeah. Yeah.
And both of them affect a lot more than me,
yeah.
especially the handicap parking. That really affected people. And, they had moved it farther, which violates ADA. You can't move it away from the entrance. You got to move it towards the entrance.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
But they were more interested in aesthetics than they were in functionality.
Right. Right.
I didn't set them straight. I actually gave them a copy of the law and said, "Here, read it. It's in plain English, third grade level." And they read it and they agreed with me. You're right. We were wrong. We'll change it, and they've already changed it.
That's beautiful.
So
It's kind of you to
that
speak
shows
nice
you
of the
what you
city.
can do if you only try. The only thing holding you back that discourage you is discouraging itself. It's courage to step forward.
Yeah, it is.
It's
It
courage, man.
really is.
Stand in your spot.
It really is. It is courage. It is
The
courage.
inspector told me today, he said, Miss Steve, he said, I'd like to have one of you on every block. He said, I'm not kidding you.
That's nice.
He said, because you take care of the neighborhood. You look out for the little things that keep the neighborhood nice. And you don't, because people are people, and they'll try to get away with anything.
Yeah.
You can't. If we all tried that, it would be chaos. So,
Thank you, sir.
But the biggest thing is we've got to start understanding we're all Americans, period.
Absolutely.
That's it. You're an American, act like it.
Thank
Stop
you, sir.
acting like some third world banana republic.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank
you.
you.
Always a pleasure.
It's nice to hear people commenting in a positive manner towards the city. Because when you do something right, no one seems to ever remember that. But if you make one little mistake, boy, oh boy, they're shouting it from the rooftops.
Well, listen, let me tell you one thing that I know we do right. My wife grew up in Raleigh, North Carolina. And I spent a lot of time in Raleigh because I was born, I mean, not born, but I lived in Cary for a while, which is where I met my wife from. And her part of Raleigh is near Garner. And they have built development after development after development and have done nothing with the roads. And the one thing I can say with great pride, and my wife has had to admit it, our little town, when you come in and you want to do a major construction, they're going to make you do something with the roads. In Port St. Lucie, now they haven't done as well as they should have done in Fort Pierce with that either. But in Port St. Lucie, they have done a fabulous job of making sure that they continue to expand the roads where they're going to put in more development. And that's a thing to be very proud of. So we don't have the tied up traffic other than St. Lucie West, which is a nightmare. I don't know how you fix that. But other than St. Lucie West, we have pretty smooth flowing traffic for the most part in Port St. Lucie. But let me tell you something that's been on my mind I want to share with you. We talked about it once before, and again, this is open mic. You could talk. I'll talk about anything you want. The phone number is 340-1590. This critical race theory thing. This kind of goes back to what Steve was talking about. Yes, we're all Americans, and one of the things I've constantly complained about as I've gotten older and understand more worldly things is that I want people to understand my humanity and my commitment to be an American. But this critical race theory thing is something that is very troubling to me, and I'm going to tell you why it's troubling. White folks think it's troubling because they believe that describing some of the issues that are typically associated with critical race theory is a put down of white people. Well, no. That's not the purpose. Now, let me give you me and my sister's example, and I got a call, so Winnie, just be patient. I'm going to get to you. Let me give you an example of my own personal experience. My sister and I moved from Philadelphia in a predominantly black neighborhood to what used to be all white neighborhood in New Jersey. It's not that anymore, but at the time we moved there, it was predominantly a white neighborhood. Now, in that school, I got an excellent education. But in that environment, I struggled with my identity. And the only thing I knew about me as I graduated from high school is that we were slaves and picked cotton. That's disgusting. That's absolutely disgusting and horrendous. As a result of that, I had some very serious self-esteem issues when I graduated from high school because I really didn't know who I was or what my place was in the world or in this country. But as I went to college and I began to read and I took an African American studies class, my eyeballs blew wide open. And we got Winnie on line one. Yes, Winnie.
How you doing, Rudy?
Yes, ma'am.
The road is so bad here in Fort Pierce, it's ridiculous. They call the city. And I was 100 years old, and now we got some of them. It's terrible, and we were gone so badly. And she talked about vote yes for the penny and the penny. It went through it passed. It's a penny or something to help with the roads and the sidewalk, but it's a slow process, slow. And it's terrible. Been like that over 100 years. The loss of these roads is so terrible. I don't know why they did nothing about it a long time ago.
Well,
And
you got some things.
We dug up and everything.
You got some things going on in Fort Pierce that need to be fixed. You got part of the heart of the city in the county, and then you got the other part of the city in the city. And there's parts of Fort Pierce which really blew my mind when I found it out. You could have the county on one side of the street and the city on the other side of the street, and they're governed by two different governmental entities.
That's what she told me.
I once lived in a house that was on the city-county line, and we always kidded around. If the police were to knock at the door, they'd say, "Open up, it's the police," and we'd say, "City or county?"
Yeah.
Because it was different. The back door was in the county, the front door was in the city.
Yeah. That's. I don't know why, after all this time, as old as Fort Pierce is, they have not been able to resolve that, and it also is an effect on taxes there too. So I don't know.
At Port St. Lucie, they road is so smooth. I know they're talking about Kyle Reagan section, he the city commission, and Alabama that he can pass on, but that he'll live it. They tell me to call them two people, they the city commission or something. But that's terrible, and I guess that they don't care. And I Port St. Lucie road is so much smooth. I told the city.
Yeah.
I said, I told the Lucy road is so much smoother. And they ain't doing nothing about it here. That's folks here. That's bad business. What you think about Armand Aubrey, the black jogger, the guys, the white criminals that killed that guy in Greenville, Georgia? Actually, why it taking so long to sign a qualified?
Well, I think it just went to trial this week, I think.
No, they're still doing the jury.
Yeah. Oh, they're still doing the jury. Yeah. Okay. Yeah. All right. Yeah, they're still trying to pick the jury.
Why it take so long, though?
Oh man,
last week. It still continue on this week.
Well, I will tell you, generally speaking, and I got to let you go because I got another caller. They try to wait and let the pressure die down before they do the trial, hoping that it'll give them a more favorable outcome. But thank you, my friend, for calling. Appreciate you. Jerry on line one. Yes, sir.
Hello?
Yes, sir.
Yes, I was wondering, I did a tone purple back in the 60s. I had a stroke about a year ago, so I'm a little hard to understand, but I did a tone purple on the Lincoln Douglas for Bates, and I was wondering about Frederick Douglass. If you could introduce us to him and tell us about Frederick Douglass, and I'd like to listen off air if that'd be okay.
Well, what do you want to know about Frederick Douglass?
Well, just tell us what you know. And I listen off air with that okay. I had a stroke about a year ago.
Okay.
All
right. Well, what I can tell you about Frederick Douglass. At the time that Frederick Douglass was coming along, he was an emancipated slave, and he was, from what I understand, the first black man that attended Harvard and graduated from there. He was different from, oh my goodness, I can't think of his name. The other two black gentlemen at the time, he was much more radical in terms of wanting to have freedom and proper rights for African American people. And he was considered a African American intellectual of the time. And many white scholars listened to him, and he wrote things in books that are still things that people read and talk about. That is, in a nutshell, Frederick Douglass. And he spent his lifetime fighting to have freedom and equal treatment for African American people. Now, let me get back to what I was saying about the critical race theory thing. As I told you about my own personal experience, so why did I tell you that? For those of you out there that feel it's so important that your white kids do not learn about things that you feel are not favorable to your culture and your people, you deprived me of learning about myself. And that knowing who you are is part of building self-esteem. Just imagine growing up. I'm gonna try to get you to I want you to try to live in my body for a second now. And you're growing up, and the only thing you know about yourself is that your people picked cotton and they were slaves. That's it. That is it. That's the beginning and end of what we knew. Now, I have friends that grew up like in Brooklyn and some parts of Boston. They had a whole different level of teaching. But my growing up in this nice little suburb where I had a nice education, that was what I learned. And I'm not by myself. When I read Obama's first book, one of the things that he talks about in his book, being a multiracial child, was trying to square with his identity. He struggled with who he was for a long time. So when you talk about critical race theory, you're saving potentially your children at my expense. Don't do that to me. I got 2 biracial grandkids. They need to know who they are on both sides. I want them to be able to go to school and know about their ancestors who are part of me. They need to know that to be whole people. And one of the things that have often been struggles for biracial children is understanding completely who they are. And it's become more difficult. In the 40s and the 50s, and probably in most of the 60s, it was not a big challenge because you were basically rejected by most white folks, and most black people would embrace you as a multiracial person. So now as time has gone forward, things have changed. So now you have, and you know, when I sit in Walmart sometime when I'm doing my Medicare thing now, and I just sit there and I look, I can see the multiracial kids and the multiracial couples walking through there, and I'm thinking to myself, my God, 40 years ago, I would have never seen this like this.
Have you noticed how beautiful these children are?
Yeah.
and they all look like regular kids, but when they grow up, some of the most beautiful people.
Yeah.
And I've got some brown-skinned grandchildren myself, and I care a whole lot more about them than I do about all these people that are telling us how to live and what to do and what to think.
Yeah. Yeah. So, you know, so I share that with you just so that I know I have a predominantly conservative audience, and I know most of you are like, well, I don't want them telling stories that's going to make my grandkids or my kids feel guilty. Well, I don't want you to necessarily feel guilty, but don't deny me the right to understand who I am, because it is part of, listen, ask any athlete. Any successful athlete has to have strong self-esteem. I have known great players that had low self-esteem and they never achieved what they could have achieved because they never could figure out what really they had going for them. So you have to allow people's self-esteem to grow. That is really important.
I don't think it would get the kids mad over critical race theory. It would be some informational truth that would be suppressed from them otherwise.
Yes.
Who's going to want to let their kids know? Well, you got to leave things to the kids, and you know what? If you leave it with the kids, I think we're in great shape because they're easier thinking about all this stuff than we are. I mean, we get older, we're all set in our ways, and some of us have a lot of quirks, but the kids don't. The kids have pure innocence.
Yeah, that's true. That is very true. But and you know there's one school of thought that says, why don't we just leave things in the past? Just leave things in the past and everything will work out. Well, no, it won't work out like that. People have to understand the complete picture of who they are and what we are as Americans. We do need to have the full picture. We don't need to dwell on it, and we have to remember that we're Americans, but yes, we do need to have a full picture. And I got my man Carlos. Carlos, how are you, sir?
Hey, what's going on, Rudy?
Okay.
Hey, nothing like there was when I was growing up in the Bronx, and I was called every single racial name there was, and so was every other kid. So was the white kids. The Irish were called the M word. Everybody was called something. What I don't understand about this stuff that they're teaching in school now is they're making the white kids feel like they're at fault for every other thing that's going on. It's like saying, if my father was a serial killer, why are you going to punish me? It's got nothing to do with what their white parents did. These teachers are wrong, making the white kids feel like they're at fault for everything and they got privilege over everybody else. You don't teach that to a kid. That's teaching hatred. That's segregation.
No,
that's
Carlos.
Making people fight again. Yes, it is.
No, it's not, Carlos.
It's
and shame on you for thinking that way, but go ahead.
And that is Jim Crow. We are all Americans. Yes, that happened years ago, and it shouldn't have happened. But you can't blame these kids now because they're white and other kids of different color. You can't do that. You can't do that to a child, first of all, and that shouldn't be taught because that is Jim Crow. That's separating. That is breaking this country down the middle.
Okay, now you're absolutely wrong, Carlos. Now wait. I'm going to give you something to read, okay? There's a book called The Color of Law by Richard Rothstein, okay?
I could write a book too, Rudy.
Okay.
I could write a book too. Doesn't mean that I was right.
Well, now listen to what I'm going to tell you, and then you tell me whether or not, then you can speak your mind. Richard Rothstein, who is a white gentleman of Jewish descent, did an extensive study of property ownership in the United States, and he had proven undeniably that minority wealth was absolutely held back because of the property restrictions placed on people of color and their ability to own property in neighborhoods. That's real, Carlos. That's real. That's real.
What year was this, Rudy? What year was this?
We're talking in the 60s and the 50s.
That's what I'm saying. We're talking about now.
No, but Carlos, here's what you don't understand.
What don't I understand?
I'm going to explain to you what you don't understand. Now, listen, and if you listen, you're going to learn something. I'm going to teach you something valuable. What you don't understand is that inability to develop wealth meant Billy couldn't go to college because mom and dad didn't have enough equity in their house, maybe to go to the bank to get the loan to help Billy go to school.
Yeah.
Billy's dad, who was an excellent craftsman, who had all the ability in the world to open up a business as a small contractor, couldn't do it because he wasn't allowed to get a loan. Now, so what had happened? You have created generational disadvantage by not creating opportunities to develop wealth. That was purposeful. Now, let's fast forward to today. Do I think all the white people today are responsible for what happened to Billy and his family? No. But did they benefit from that? The answer is yes.
How, Rudy? How, Rudy?
Let me explain it to you. If they were able to get it, and Billy's father and Billy couldn't get it, then they had an advantage that Billy didn't have. That doesn't make them evil. Now understand what I'm saying to you. The fact that they had that advantage doesn't make them evil, but the advantage is real. It's not made up. It's not phony. It's not fake.
Rudy,
it's real.
That's ancient history.
It's not ancient history, Carlos.
That's not happening now. Rudy, do you know that
Do you think it doesn't happen now, Carlos?
Can I say something, Rudy? In this country, Google it. There are more millionaires African American than there are whites in this country.
No, that's not true.
Yes, there is true.
No, it's not.
From every baseball team to every basketball team to every football team to every CEO of the companies, there are more millionaire blacks in this country than there are whites. Yes, it is. Google it. Sometimes get off MSNBC and CNN and Google stuff and check out stuff. You got to teach your kids. You got to move. That was a bad time. You got to move forward. You are an American now. Go forward.
I am absolutely an American and would not listen. I am an American and I would not want to be anything else. But what the difference between you and I is very simple. You want to accept America at face value and you find nothing wrong and you're just happy to be alive. I love America and I'm happy to be here. And when I think she's not doing the right thing, I'm going to speak about it. I'm going to talk about it. I'm going to talk about it because it's my country and I love my country. And when I think my country's off base, just like when I think my son's off base, I'm going to speak about it.
Can I tell you why I feel this way about this country?
I'm listening.
Because when you come from a country that your father and your grandfather worked their butts off, and they bought 7 houses to give each kid a house, and a man comes into power, a leftist, that's why I'll never vote left, comes into power and says, why do you have 7 houses and the guy up the road has none? And my grandfather tells them, because I busted my butt, I worked 2 jobs day and night to give each of my kids a house, and they invest them, and they take his houses away. And they give it to strangers. They never earned.
That didn't happen here.
When you come to this country, and you have the opportunity to go forward in life like everybody else does, then this is why we love this country so much. There's a difference, Rudy. There's what I'm saying. Stop that MSNBC and CNN. You're just doing their talking points.
I'm not doing their talking points. Carlos, my opinions are my opinions because I read, I research, and I get valuable insight. I get valuable insight and understanding, which allows me to formulate my thoughts on what I believe.
True.
I don't. MSNBC don't formulate my thoughts. I could tell you. I could tell you. Read "Evil Geniuses" by Kurt Anderson. It will tell you how the Republican Party systematically corrupted the economic system. Read "Who Stole America" by Hedrick Smith, and he will tell you how the American dream was stolen from the average American. Should I go on? Can I go on? I tell you, read "Saving Capitalism for the Many, but Not the Few." That's how I formulate my thinking.
You're reading a leftist book. Of course you're going to think
I'm
that.
I'm reading books, and the book "Evil Geniuses" was written by a Republican.
Yeah, a so-called Republican, Rudy, so-called Republican. How many of them we have?
Carlos, you unfortunately, my friend, evidently are from Cuba, and I have a very good friend from Cuba.
You
yeah,
one
no.
thing to tell this guy about Frederick John Douglass. You forgot one major thing.
Okay, what's the major thing I forgot?
You forgot to tell him, I don't know if you did it on purpose or not, you forgot to tell him that he was a Republican.
What has that got to do with it?
That's got a lot to do with it.
No, it doesn't. Because let me tell you why it doesn't. Because the Republicans in the past with Lincoln fought to help free black people. No question. They passed legislation. But they lost their way. And when they lost their way, the Democrats who decided their thinking was faulty changed their thinking in order to try to gain. No, okay, wait a minute. Let me finish now, because I've read extensively about this. The Democrats changed their thinking in order to try and gain support from people who were not Republicans. My father and most of his friends were all Republican. So you telling me that Frederick Douglass was a Republican, that means nothing to me, because in the end of the day, what happened is the Democratic Party modified its behavior and policies in order to attract people to their party, which the Republicans can't do.
Can I tell you to read something?
I'm listening.
Okay, in 1965, the majority of the House and Senate, thank God alive, was Republican. 80% of the Democrats voted down to give civil rights. That is not a lie. That is the truth, and that is modern history. Google it. 80% of both in the House and the Senate, Democrats voted against it.
I don't know if it was 80%, but you're absolutely correct.
Your party voted not to give you what you have right now, the freedom to get on the radio and spew your MSNBC crap. Your party would have held you back. And Jim Crow was a Democrat.
But they changed. But they changed, though. That's the difference. And you could change. The Republican Party could change. They changed in order to attract other people to the party. That's what they did.
What did they give you? What did they give the blacks? Blacks are still living in ghettos.
Tell me what Trump did for you.
Here.
Tell me what Trump did for you. Answer the question. What did Trump do for you?
What did Trump do for me? He freed a lot of people of color for just selling marijuana on the corner. You think that law that your president back in '94 said, "Oh, they're savages and they'll hit your mother over the head." Your president, that dummy in the White House now that you voted for, said, "Called you guys savages. Called my kids savages. They hit the grandmother over the head with a hammer, and you still voted for him." You know what the woman that you voted for, Hillary Clinton, she hugged and kissed Robert Byrd, who was not just a Ku Klux Klan member, he was the leader of the Ku Klux Klan, and said, "Robert, You inspired me when I was growing up. Well, when she was growing up, he was the leader of the Ku Klux Klan. That is your party, buddy.
Do you think I didn't know that? Do you think I didn't know that?
But you still voted for him.
I wouldn't vote for Robert Byrd, but Robert Byrd repented. He admitted that he made a mistake. He admitted that he made a mistake. Now let me ask you a question. Do you believe in God? Do you believe in God?
Black people,
Do you believe in God? Yes or no?
believe in God.
Do you believe in God? Yes or no?
Yes, I do.
Okay, so if you believe in God, then God has forgiven people who have made mistakes and had sin. Did they not? Did they? Does God do that?
Not for what he did. I bet you he killed black people. I bet you he burned down.
You don't know that. You don't know that.
Nobody does an investigation.
Carlos,
He's a Democrat.
Carlos, you know what? You have been so, and I am ashamed of you. I have a good Puerto Rican friend who would be listening to you and he'd want to vomit that you would be talking like this.
He's a lefty.
Yeah, well, anyway, so Carlos, you know what? Good night.
He's a lefty.
Thank you. Good night. So,
Wow. Spirited debate here.
he's like, I mean, Carlos is like, I can't believe he's gone so far. He used to be fairly reasonable guy.
Well, perhaps he might have noticed that we don't allow filibustering on the show.
Yeah.
And you'll be faced with a question when you are filibustering, and you better pay attention to the question so you can answer it.
Yeah, he's gone way right. You know, and I know from the story that he was telling me, he must have came from Cuba. Yeah, I know that Castro took a lot of people's wealth. My very good friend Rene Arteaga gave me a full education about that, why he's has some concerns about any kinds of socialism. But the reality is, just for those of you that don't completely understand it, a lot of the things that happen when companies say they're socialists, they're not socialists. They're not practicing socialism. They have become corrupt leaders that started in a socialist manner and have gone on to become dictators as opposed to socialists. There's a huge difference. Now, and I would dare say that's what happened in Cuba as well. Castro became a dictator instead of the leader of the Socialist Party. There's very few, I can't say none because I can't think of any off the top of my head, but I know there are some. There are very few pure socialist countries. And most of the ones that are often talked about as examples of socialism gone wrong are not socialists gone wrong, it's leadership gone wrong, as in Venezuela. That is started out as socialism gone wrong when the leader's corrupt. Okay? That's what happens. And that happens because you allow concentrated power to be in the hands of one person uninterrupted, which is part of what hopefully our system will protect us from. But there was an attempt to do away with that in this last election, which actually still scares the hell out of me how close that we came to actually losing our democratic government. And it is worth fighting for, that we try to maintain our democracy. That's for sure. That's absolutely for sure. And if anybody has listened to me for any period of time, if there's one thing I've said on here, and I've said it over and over and over, and I'm going to say it again, you have every chance in the Republican Party to win black people to the Republican Party if you don't do dumb stuff. Because black people are basically very conservative. And we got Jay on line one. How are you, Jay?
Okay, I'm doing pretty good, Rudy. Just listening to the last conversation, and it was just very sad listening to that, thinking about what's going on in the Caribbean.
Yeah.
And, the things that's happening in Cuba and all over the place, and how most Americans are misled. And, when they talk about culture and they talk about history, and, the big thing now is they don't want to teach, real history in the history books in schools now because of the right wing, got upset because their feelings got hurt. But I just want to talk about this guy, John Eastman. He's a constitutional lawyer.
Yeah.
A friend of Trump's. Very smart guy. A lot of these. That's the sad part about what Trump did, because of a person like this, John Eastman, or some of these other characters that's in the Senate that smart, went to Howard, went to Harvard, or one of all these are real prestigious schools and very bright people. If they got in and got a chance to be president, they would be a little bit smarter and they would do a lot different, because the rules are they're not very. There's no penalty for what happened on January the 6th.
That's
There's
absolutely
no penalty.
right. That's right.
And they found out this guy John Eastman knew it, and he found a way to really change the system. And he came very close with the vice president. He almost convinced him to do what he said he could do. And he said that all you have to do is just go there and change things when he was at the U.S. Capitol after the election. When they were counting the votes and all that, and change things around. He could have done that. And then the secondary, if that didn't work, then we stormed the Bastille, and that's what they did. And he was the one that convinced and laid out the plan how that would work. And they had all this plan a couple of days before they attacked the U.S. Capitol. He was the architect, and this guy's still walking around. And I'm trying to figure out, why is the House investigating when it should be the FBI investigating this kind of stuff?
I think the
it
FBI
should be the federal government.
I think the FBI is also involved in the investigation.
Because when the FBI knocks on the door and tells you to show up, you don't have a choice. You have to show up, or you go to jail.
Yeah,
that's the difference. I'm just trying to bring things out. Just common sense. Most people forget that when you break a law, especially a federal offense, or if somebody comes in and is trying to give you a subpoena, a federal subpoena. Right now, today, one of these guys working for the law enforcement here in this area comes to your door with a subpoena, you better show up in court.
Yep.
Now, if they can do that with a local police officer, why can't Congress have the power to do it? And they're supposed to be representing the whole United States. And it's so sad that they let that happen, but they didn't have they should have had something in the books where, when it gets serious, like that was very serious, it should be the AG taking over and the FBI going around, doing the investigation, getting all the information, and going to people's houses and saying, you have to show up. If you don't, you're going to be arrested.
Well, let me just say this to you.
Yeah.
Part of the problem is that our party tries to be fair. And it's not, and they always try to be judicious in how they go about doing things. Like recently, Biden has made 3 Republican appointments recently. I don't know if you know about them.
No, I didn't know.
He appointed Jeff Flake to be a ambassador in Turkey. Okay. He appointed the former Secretary of State in Seattle, I think it was, to head up the voting security section in Homeland Security. And the third one escapes me at the moment, but he appointed 3 Republicans to the administration.
Unbelievable.
And you know, my point of that is simply this. Not so much that I begrudge him the point. I understand what he's trying to do,
Mm-hmm.
but Mitch wouldn't do it.
Yeah.
Trump didn't do it. They didn't appoint any Democrats at all. Democrats were treated like lepers. But here we are. We're going to try to be fair. And that's always been part of our Achilles heel. We try to be fair, and they slap you upside the head. That's,
I just wanted to say this for fun. That's why this bipartisanship. I know he's been in the Senate for 30 years or better, and but the Senate is not like it was when he was there, or when he started. It's a different house. It's a different institution. These people don't care anything about trying to get together with the Democrats. All they're thinking about is the next election and taking power.
That's
and
it.
Putting people in place, stacking the Supreme Court and all of those kind of things, and thinking about the future. And they care less about the people. All they think about is how they can win.
That's it.
That's all they want. That's all they care about. And sooner or later, Biden will figure that out. I figured that he was pretty smart. I thought he would have figured it out by now and understand what's going on now. They don't care. They change. They don't care about none of this stuff. That's why none of them voted for the Voters' Right Act. Not
That's right.
one senator in the Senate, when that vote came up last week or 2 weeks ago, not one of them. And I thought maybe there might have been a couple, especially of some of the females, but not. They didn't even want it. They're brainwashed too.
Yep.
They're all brainwashed. They're all brainwashed and scared to death about being somebody running against them in their own party.
Yep.
So they go on and on like that, and it's just very sad. And we have to wake up, and we have to make sure that we get up and make sure we get all our folks out to vote. Get ready to register now. Go down to Gertrude's office and register if you're not a registered voter. If you're 18, get your behind down there, or somebody parent take you there and make sure you register so you can vote next year this time.
Thank you, Jay.
That's the motto. That's the way we need to do.
Thank
and that's
you,
my
Jay.
message for today, man. I appreciate it.
Oh, thank you, sir. I appreciate you. Folks, I'd like to thank you so much for tuning in to the African American Scene. God bless. Be safe. And I will see you next Wednesday right here for the African American Scene.
Who was the author of Color of Law?
Richard Rothstein.
Okay, Richard Rothstein. All right, the African American Scene with Rudy Howard moving to Monday nights beginning November 8th to make room for IRSC basketball. Archives of the show are on YouTube and maybe a few other places too. Thanks for sharing with us.
Newsflash, Rudy Howard of the African American Scene is moving to Monday nights starting November 8th to accommodate IRSC basketball. Same time, just a different day. Remember, Rudy Howard, African American Scene, Monday nights at 6, beginning November 8th.